Welcome. So pleased that you all have joined us for this breakout session. Dee, why don't you set us up?
Let's introduce ourselves first today. So we're going to talk about winning strategies for family caregiving today. And we decided that it's more fun to play games than it is to just listen to people talk to us. So you are all part of the presentation today. So we expect active participation from you. And we look forward, we'll be asking questions along the way. So please put them in chat, have your chat open. And any other comments or questions you have along the way, you're certainly welcome to put there too. So let's introduce ourselves first today. I am Dee Childers, a certified care manager, and I have a company called Life Changes Elder Care Consulting, which came about after I became a family caregiver 13 years ago now, almost 14 years ago. And I was not prepared for it either, did not see it coming. And what I realized was I had a lot to learn. I was used to documenting in my professional human resources career. And so I started creating charts and documents for myself, but realized I had these great assets to be able to share with others. And if I was having such a hard time in this whole arena, I knew others must be as well. So I created Life Changes Elder Care Consulting and just love to share my resources as well as my team. And met Dara when she had this brainstorm to create Learn. And I was so honored to be one of the people that she invited to start this organization with her 4 years ago.
Founding board member. Thank you.
Founding board member. Yes. So Anne, how about Anne introducing herself?
Okay, I'm Ann Kenny. I am a geriatrician and a palliative care physician. I would like to say that I should have been prepared for my caregiving journey because of what I do for work, but not so much. My mother was living with dementia. And I fell into a lot of the caregiving burnout things that I should have seen coming, but I did not. I knew the things to do, but I did not implement them. I met Dara at a conference and was introduced to Dee, and so happy to be part of this team um, and add my medical knowledge to their caregiving expertise. And it's a nice marriage.
And I have had the opportunity to be introduced to all of you and share some of my stories, so you know who I am. And as you've heard, I'm all about collaboration and the power of we. And this is a perfect example of where coming together as professionals across disciplines, we really can be much more powerful and offer more. So together, it's my pleasure to be here with these amazing colleagues. So with that, I am going to share the rules of our game. So our game is called Winning Strategies for Family Caregiving, and the goal of this family caregiving game is to complete your caregiving responsibilities and finish life with the best quality of life possible and with family relationships and resources intact. It seems like a noble goal. It's pretty challenging, however.
So I want to ask
thank you.
everybody out there first, if you would describe in the chat, just give us a quick response to what primary caregiving role you would assign to yourself today. So are you a care recipient, family caregiver, professional caregiver, care advisor, physician, other? So if you just take a quick second and enter that in the chat, we'd like to see who's joined us today.
That's great. And that gets your fingers warmed up because we're going to ask you to use the chat. I know there might be a few people who might not be able to, and that's okay. But anyone who is able to chat would love to know who we're talking to today. And our group's kind of small, so if we don't get a lot of chats, we might ask people to come offline. So we have some professionals, and we have some family caregivers for an adult son, parents, care provider. Okay, so we've got a broad audience, and luckily our presentation works for everybody. Primary caregiver for mom, nurse, power of attorney. Okay, very good. Well, thank you all for being here and for joining us as we play this game. And really, the goal is to finish your caregiving responsibilities, reach that finish line with your resources and family relationships intact. And there's really three rules of the game that we would like you to keep in mind And I think they're pretty simple, but they're really important for caregiving. And the first rule we learned in kindergarten, and you just really do need to play nice on the playground. And this is a team sport. Like, we've got to be working together, and we need to be kind, and we need to play nice on the playground, and try to build bridges, not walls. When things don't go well, we want to make sure that we are building those bridges and not pushing people away. Family caregiving, caregiving in general, you don't always get to choose who you need. And so building those bridges so that you can have successful partnerships and successful collaborations. And the third rule, this one's a trickier one, but you're supposed to avoid family demons. And some of the most common family demons that we find in family caregiving are greed, jealousy, and resentment, but they're not the only family demons. So, your next ask is in the chat if you would be willing to share what other family demons you might have experienced in your own caregiving journeys, in addition to greed, jealousy, and resentment. What family demons have you encountered? I'm watching the chat. We need some Jeopardy music. Do, 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 do. Anger. Anger, that's a good one. Lack of unwellness to share in lack of willingness to share in responsibilities. Different values and views on end of life. These are challenges
Big
for
ones.
sure. Anything
Mhm.
else out there that someone would like to share? We'll give you a second because we know it takes a minute to get to that chat. Greed, jealousy, resentment, anger, lack of willingness to share. They're not playing nice on the playground, not playing by the rules. Teamwork or lack thereof. These are the kinds of things. Losing oneself, absolutely. These are family demons. Well, we're going to work through some of this, and we're going to talk about some strategies to help you avoid or deal with some of these demons and challenges.
Yes.
All right. So, Anne, why don't you give us an overview of how to play?
Okay. There's really three simple rules on how to play. One is to choose your team. That team is going to have a core group, but we want you to think about building it out and out and out into more and more people. There's, as Dara said in the team can be as small as two, but many, many hundreds if you need them and want them. Secondly, develop a game plan, and that will have to be a fluid thing, but develop a game plan and then adapt it as you need to. And thirdly, keep good documentation. Not everyone's strength, but it's something we're going to say over and over and over. Know where your documents are, have a place for your documents, keep documents.
Well, one of the easiest way to do part of it for that ongoing documentation is just to use a spiral notebook. And it's light, you can take it with you everywhere. You can make little notes in it for action items, thoughts that come to mind, other things that are needed, document meetings, medical appointments. It's just a really helpful tool. So in order to keep good documentation, I always recommend a spiral notebook.
And if you look at all three of these rules, really what it comes down to is building a plan and being organized. You need to know who your team is. You need to know what they're responsible for and what they should do. And then you need to not just keep your documents, but keep track of all of your activities. Who's doing what and how is it going?
And how much time does it take?
Exactly, those kinds of things. So we'll explore more of these together, but you get the idea. Organize
Right.
and plan.
And don't think you're going to do it all by yourself. It's a team sport.
Absolutely. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to introduce you to our game board. And we are actually playing part 2 of our game board because we recently played part 1 with another Idaho-based The Smart workshop. And so knowing that we might see some of those same people today, we decided to play part 1 with them about a month ago, and we're playing part 2 today. But fear not, part 2 is just as awesome as part 1. And the way we play our game, because we like games, is of course we have playing cards that go along with this, and it makes this presentation always fresh and new. So
Yes, it does, actually.
we never get bored. So Dee and I play cards over here, and Dee gets to pick the first game that we're going to play today.
Taking care.
So taking care, sorry, is the first game that we're going to play today under category taking care. So similar to a game you might be aware of, we have 6 categories of gameplay today: harsh reality, talk the talk, family dynamics, health matters, money matters, and taking care. And the first game we're going to play is sorry.
And, things don't always go the way that we plan them or we hope that they will. And that includes having interpersonal interactions with each other that don't go the way we thought. And so it's really important to be willing to acknowledge when things aren't going the way we thought they should. When it's important for us to stand our ground when there's something related to health or safety and we do have more information, is so to know, or when we're supporting somebody who's expressed their values and their wishes, and that we have the courage to stand up sometimes to health professionals and other family members, and it's about safety as well, and to not be too full of ourselves, to not be willing to apologize when appropriate. And, it was interesting. I had a situation recently with a colleague, and I didn't agree with her, and she didn't agree with me. I couldn't really say there was a right or wrong. And so I apologize for us having this misunderstanding sometime.
Mhm.
It's just the way we go. It doesn't, I didn't do anything wrong and neither did she, but we had a miscommunication. So to be willing to apologize when appropriate, and also to forgive yourself for unintended consequences. We're humans. As a caregiver, we know we're tired, we're doing many things at one time, and we're not perfect. And so to be kind and forgiving of ourselves and the other members on our team, I think is super important.
So, with each game, we're going to ask a question at the end of the game and ask you to participate and share. Can you think of a situation where you wish you could apologize for a decision or a mistake that you made that was unintended? It's back to that unintended consequences. And we'll leave a minute for you to make those notes. This one's a tough one to jump right into. We haven't
Yeah.
given them any warm up to these. This was a tougher question. But if you're willing to share something where you think of a situation where you wish you could apologize for something that didn't go well or a decision you made, I'm going to share a gift that I received from a manager I worked for once. And it may come up again in another slide, and that's okay. But I'm going to share it here because I just feel compelled. It was very interesting, and it was in a team situation where there had been, a disagreement, as
Mm-hmm.
you just
Mm-hmm.
indicated. And it was a beautiful gift when he said, Dara, it really will be way less stressful for you if you just assume positive intent. And what he said, what his message was, for the most part, almost always, and I say almost always,
There are
okay,
exceptions. Yeah.
almost always, people are trying to do the right thing. People are trying to make progress, trying to help. And what you've experienced is some kind of unintended consequence or unexpected outcome. And so if you can approach the situation assuming positive intent, it actually enables a much more effective conversation oftentimes. It doesn't mean you'll agree, but you can assume that they intended to do the right thing. So help me understand why you did
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me understand what you were intending to accomplish. And when you have a conversation in that way, it actually does get you to sorry. It
Right.
allows you to get to sorry because then you can understand and be less angry.
Right. So we have a couple of people, geographic distance as well as emotional distance. Yes, you don't have to be far away to have emotional distance. That can be one of those things. And just lack of communication. Sometimes it's lack of communication. Sometimes it's thorough communication, or timely. So yes, those are good examples. Thank you for sharing.
So thank you for playing sorry with us. And now we're going to play another game.
Okay. And this one is
blind man's bluff in the harsh reality category. So, Anne, can you take us through blind man's bluff?
I certainly can. I think this hits many of us when we're trying to care for people. Um, if we don't know what it is, it can't hurt me. But is that true? Probably not. We need to realize that things that we are not seeing can hurt us. And when we're caring for people, sometimes they will hold it close to their chest for whatever reason. They may not tell us because they don't want to be a burden on us. They may not tell us because they're ashamed of it or whatever. But sometimes it's good to be a little bit skeptical and dig a bit deeper. Other times in blind man's bluff, things can happen um, where you don't really understand. A physician may tell you something, but they don't tell you the whole story. Physicians are human and they um, might not tell you the consequences of what's coming, but they say, "Oh, I told them." So it's blind man's bluff reminds us to ask questions, dig a little deeper, look for things we don't necessarily want to see. Um, and sometimes we're hiding things from ourselves. Sometimes we don't even want to acknowledge that um, we have been a controlling so that our team doesn't work well together. So there's these sneaky corners, there's these sneaky dark places in our caregiving journeys where someone may not be telling us the complete truth, where we might not be telling ourselves the complete truth. I think these are some of the big ones that come up for me.
Go ahead.
Well, and I was going to say one of those is I see a lot in family systems is that there is one person, usually it's an adult daughter,
Usually.
who says, I've got this. I don't need anybody's help. I'm good. And when you start to look at justifications and excuses, as we dig a little deeper into that, well, nobody's going to do it quite the way I do it. Well, is that the only way to be done? Is there other rooms? So, when people move into that kind of situation, I really encourage them to kind of work through that and see who is this serving? Is it serving the person you're caring for? Is it serving you? And how exhausted you are and how much time you have to not take care of yourself and kind of work through that. So,
So the
And
question, oh, go ahead, Anne.
oh,
Sorry.
oh, sorry. I was just also going to say that sometimes when we think we can do it all ourselves, there's a professional that can help us. And maybe this is the time where being blind to understanding the bigger picture, but somebody who does it so well day in and day out, it's better to ask a professional to help.
So with that, I'm going to ask the question for this game. And the question we would encourage you to put an answer in chat if you're willing is, what is something you initially missed that you wish you would have been able to see sooner than you did? And while you think about putting an answer in chat, so something you wished you would have seen sooner, I'm just going to go back to the story I shared earlier. We were so blinded by our expectation bias that we hadn't seen my mother-in-law's decline, and her health had declined to such a degree that when she got sick with the flu, she didn't have the strength to fight it. And so that's one of those blinders, right? There's all kinds of blinders you can encounter. And let's see, I'm wondering if our chat is working. Is anybody chatting?
oh yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Karen's typing, so I'm going to give her a second. There we go. Trusting someone on their word and it fails. Yep, that is blind man's bluff for sure. That my mom wasn't able to set up her medication on her own. And since father was refusing to help, yes, you don't want to see, he doesn't want to see, you think they can do it, and really needing to stay in front of that and allowing yourself to see something you don't want to see. Late husband and she didn't share decline. Absolutely. You don't want to see that. How far the dementia had progressed. Boy, can we excuse that, right? Oh, they're tired. Oh, all kinds of ways to justify things that if we step back and look, we might see something. Denial of a disability following a brain injury. It's really hard to accept some of the realities of life, but taking off those blinders really does allow
Makes a
you
difference.
to more successfully care for that person and yourself, right? Allows you to work through some of those challenges. So thank you for the responses. This is how we play our game. All right, Dee,
Okay.
next game.
All right. Hide and seek, family
Hide
dynamics.
Hide and seek. We're going to return back to our main game board here, and we're going to play hide and seek. So this one's for you, Dee.
Oh, yes. So family contributions are not always equal, and actually they're usually not equal. And so we need to be aware of that. And certainly distance and circumstances may have something to do for it or do with it. Certainly that causes a problem for ability to be there and do hands-on stuff. I know when we were engaged in caregiving for dad, I was here local on the ground, so I did more of the, go to the doctors, but my sisters from afar each took roles. So it might not be the same, but it was equitable. And so sometimes we have to understand that not everybody might be willing to help for whatever reasons. We have our own issues that we have to deal with, and so to look at that too. And so when you are looking at asking people for help, is you need to focus on their strengths. So availability, their strengths, what your expectations are, and assign administrative support tasks to those who can and will. That was one of the great things about my sister in Portland. She could help unsubscribe dad from the 76 magazine subscriptions he'd signed up for. That was not something I had the energy to do, but Terry was great at it. That and getting unsubscribed from the 100 pieces of mail he received today, or every day. So, yeah.
So here's the next question for you as players in our game. What activities have you asked or could you ask someone far away to help you with? So Dee just shared an example where that person far away took on the task of unsubscribing to subscriptions. But I challenge you to think about what is something that you're doing or have done that you could ask someone who's not right there to help you with. And we're challenging you that with this question because it is tricky. It's hard. And it gets back to that I can do it. It's faster if I just do it myself. It'll take me just as long to train somebody how to do it as it will to do it. And the reality is, we all enter into this with many, not all. Some people who are doing lifespan caregiving have accepted this, but many people enter into the caregiving journey thinking it's going to be short. Oh, how long will this won't take that long. I won't be doing this so long. And the average caregiving journey is, even just with aging, and AARP says, 25% of people do caregiving for more than 5 years, and 15% it's more than 10 years. So whether you're naturally on a lifespan or at an end of life, this is a long time. So let's see, we've got some answers here. Scheduling, my brother taking over banking issues along with computer assistance. Absolutely. In this day and age with technology, somebody far away can absolutely do remote banking and remote computer assistance. We've got regular video calls, sending cards and letters. Huge.
Real mail.
Real mail. Really huge for you to have somebody else taking some of the emotional support. And with the advent of technology and Zoom calls, and real mail, but all of these technological things, people far away can be part of that daily emotional support.
Well, and just the whole real mail part, I think, is really interesting because so often the generations that we're caring for are used to getting mail in the mailbox, and that's what makes them feel good. They like that. So yeah.
This is a good one. Just provide some dollars for monthly takeout, a gift to you and the person you care for. They can order something from their favorite restaurant. Now you can order it from your favorite restaurant, have it delivered by DoorDash or Uber Eats, eat it in the comfort of your home, and you didn't have to cook as the caregiver. This is a gift for everybody. And and I want to remind you, oftentimes, now not always, but oftentimes that person far away is just really wishing they could do something. And so giving them something tangible that they can do to help is a gift to them as well in some cases. Let's see, what else do we have here?
Research project.
Yep, research products.
Looking at communities.
Being the start of the communication tree, communicating with the rest of the family, coordinating with friends to stop by and see somebody else, like working the angles to get people the visit calendar. There's some wonderful ideas in and things that you're doing in your lives that I hope as you're looking at the chat, we just need to think expansively. We have to be willing to ask for help. We have to be willing to suggest what somebody can do and invest so they can help you, right? A little bit of time to help them know what you know need, then they can do it.
Right.
Right.
And the one that Cheryl put was struggling with communication in the family lacking. That can be a time when you bring in an outside resource, whether it's a paid professional or someone you know that is just a really good communicator to kind of help work through that. Someone that everybody would agree with. But you know, again, this is a team sport. We don't have to do it alone. And at times it is important to bring in a professional, somebody who's used to doing this, and let them help facilitate. So this could be a learning kind of opportunity. Let me work with you a couple of times in your family meetings, and eventually you get it and you take it over, and that professional help is no longer needed. So ask for help.
All right. Time for another game because
All
I like
right.
my cards. Dee, pick another card, any card.
All right. Talk the talk.
We're gonna play telephone. So we all remember this game, right? And there's all versions of it, but it's like I whisper something to you and you whisper something, and by the time it actually makes its way, it may not resemble anything like what you
Usually
intended.
doesn't.
So our lesson here and the takeaway is to implement winning communication strategies. And the most important one that I think we all need to remember is listen to understand, not to respond, right? Making sure that we're listening to hear and to understand and not be working on our response while we're listening, but really listen. And what is it that someone is trying to understand? The next thing is, when you think you understand, it's actually probably a really good idea to confirm that understanding and use reflective listening confirmations. I hear you saying this. Do I understand that correctly? Do I understand that you are saying the following? Whatever those things, I believe this means. Making sure that what you have heard is actually what was intended to be communicated.
Yes.
And then asking those clarifying questions.
Tell me more.
Tell me more. What about? Can you give me an example? Examples, right? Not just generalizations, but examples.
Right.
And asking your loved one, whether it's a loved one, a care partner, a care professional. Anne mentioned this earlier. Doctors will tell you lots of things. It's okay to ask questions, right, Anne?
The more questions, the better. And in fact, the earlier you ask them, the better. Because if you ask early, the doctor gets an idea kind of where you are in your understanding and will either back things up or shoot things ahead, because it helps them, and you only get so much time. So get as much out of it as you can.
Right. So asking those clarifying questions, making sure you understand. And I would say, if you're on the end of that telephone line and it's come many people in between and it doesn't make sense to you, take a deep breath, assume positive intent, and then ask for clarifying questions to better understand, to make sure, because so much of what happens here is misunderstanding, miscommunication. So go ahead.
I know, sometimes when I'm sitting, so I live with my sister and I have a partner of 14 years, and we'll be sitting around talking about something. And everyone knows I go away during commercials. I just don't watch commercials. I go someplace in my head, and they can start talking to me. And all of a sudden I realize they're talking to me, and it's like, could you start over? I was not with you right then. And so they kind of laugh because they know that about me. But it's like, yeah, you kind of have to give me a little clue. You're going to talk to me during commercials.
Absolutely. Okay, so the question for you all is, what strategies work for you to confirm a shared understanding? Is there something, a skill that you have used, or some way you have tried to do this in your caregiving situations? Any suggestions out there? Any ideas?
You know, on this one, I'm just going to add one other piece to this because this is such a big part of my focus is in my master's degree or my work as a marriage and family therapist. I have a real bugaboo about the use of the word why. And because it tends to put people on the defensive. Why did you do that? Well, you didn't mean it defensively, perhaps, but that's how most of us receive why. And so I always encourage people to try to find other words. Could you help me understand your decision-making process? Could you tell me more? I don't understand, but to try to find other words to use besides why when communicating.
And we've got a couple of really great suggestions here. Keith is suggesting to draw when words are failing. Use other ways to communicate, drawing, miming, there's other ways to communicate. We have one here. This is a great suggestion, Karen. I texted my brother first to ask if we could chat because he's really busy and I want his attention when I talk to him, right? So making sure that he's ready to have that conversation. The sacred pause. Thank you, Joellen. Before you react, pause, which allows me to respond. That's wonderful. And just an acknowledgement that this is a struggle, Cheryl, right? Lots of lack of communication in families. It's not just miscommunication, but really getting to the intentionality of communication. And using your silver bullet. I love it, Marianne. When your husband doesn't want to do something, you call your daughter and she asks him and he does it. You know what works.
Use the strategies.
You use the strategies. That's great suggestions. All right, let's play another game.
Okie dokie. And we have charades. Talk the talk.
All right, we're gonna play charades now. Oh, all right. This is mine too. It's the same thing. We'll probably zoom through this one because we've got this one. We've talked a lot about that clear and effective communication. How do you do that? And it's not just about communicating. We've alluded to this in other ways, but you really do need to be candid and honest as a care recipient or as a caregiver, delivering the information even as hard as it may be, right? Candid, honesty, being clear and complete, making sure that you've provided all the information that's necessary. And I know, when you're dealing with cognitive disability or cognitive decline, this may be difficult and you may not be able to be clear and complete, but as clear and complete as you can in consideration of the capacity.
In that case, less words is better.
Yep.
We tend to over explain things when we're working with people who have cognitive decline. So fewer words is better in that case.
Yeah. So really tailoring the communication to your audience. If you're dealing with someone with cognitive decline, you're going to want to be very specific to what they can understand when you're dealing with their caregivers, the rest of the family, and making choices and decisions. Candid, honest, clear, and complete, and checking in on understanding and updating that information frequently, because I don't know a single caregiving situation I have been involved in or any of my clients have been involved in that was static, that never changed. They change all the time. Diagnosis can change, medications can change, the community, the environment can change. So many things can change. Just knowing that you can't just communicate once, right?
Right. Well, and the candid, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you do the question first so they can type and then I'll provide stuff.
Well, and I think what I would say here, I'm going to tell one other thing because I do like this question. This candid and honest, the place where this particularly came into my own caregiving responsibility was with my father-in-law. And you all heard a bit about my journey with him, but he had been in heart failure for years, and he had been in kidney failure for years, and he had a post. So he had an advance directive that is the most advanced directive that follows him around outside of the hospital, so that he didn't want to have certain types of care. And one of his choices was he didn't want dialysis. He was in kidney failure, and he had put on the post that he didn't want dialysis. He lived with this post for almost 3 or 4 years. And
And just real quick, post is physician's order for sustaining treatment, or in some states, life-sustaining treatment. So
right.
it's a doctor's order that says do this or don't do this.
Right. So when you are in the end stages of decline or disease, you can have a post where a doctor can say, don't provide this type of treatment. And so my father-in-law's post included a statement to not provide dialysis. I will tell you that every time he had another medical event, once things stabilized and he was home, I would pull out the post and I would say, is this still what you want? Because it's what he thought he wanted at the time.
Mhm.
But as your condition advances, as circumstances change, you get to change your mind if you want. And so, really asking the questions, not just once, but checking in and updating frequently as circumstances change. Is that still what you want? And it's
Mhm.
okay if it isn't,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So the question we have for you is there a time when you wished you had had more information about what somebody wanted? That's the question we have for chat. And then Dee, you had something else you wanted to
Well,
share?
while they're putting their questions or their answers in the chat, was just sometimes I hear I'm protecting them. I'm not telling them because I'm protecting them. And I think that gets back to having that clear and honest communication. Do you want to know the level of detail about your diagnosis or your care, or would you rather us just withhold that for you? So, not making assumptions that we're protecting somebody if they want to know. We need to have that part of the conversation too.
And if they say I don't want to know,
Then
that's
fine.
okay,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
my example is that I often am asking that question as a physician and also as a family member, and people will say to me, "Do I have to answer right now?" And I say, "No," but and then we talk about a time when the answer would be right. In my family, it was often, "Let's sleep on it, and we'll talk about it in the morning." In with patients, I would say, "But let's not push this too far down the road. Let's talk about it on our next visit." And that should be within a short period of time, like a month or something. But so you don't necessarily have to make that decision immediately, but you can't kick the can down the road forever.
Tough conversations. You got to have them
Yeah.
eventually. Or
Or you don't
or
have
you
them.
don't have them
Or
and you
you live by the healthcare system,
then
which is
you have
not always the best way.
and then you just have different problems in your game board. Yes. Okay. All right. Let's play another game, Dee.
All right, let's see. Family Feud.
Family Feud. We're gonna play Family Feud. This one's for you, Dee.
All right, you may need help to solve some family disagreements. And boy, isn't that true. So again, we don't always have to do this on our own. We do have to be willing to ask for help though. And there are a lot of people that are out there and able to help with just a family disagreement, a family misunderstanding, difference of opinion. And so to be willing to call in folks that have expertise in this arena, that professionals that are used to dealing with this, counselors. There's professional mediators that serve as elder mediators as well. So they're very specialized in this arena. And then attorneys. Physicians, I think, should also be on here too, although in their 15 minutes, they seldom get much time to help. But there's still a resource out there that might be able to have a separate meeting for maybe it's a misunderstanding of information. So,
You using your resources around you to help. So the
right.
question we have for you, this is one strategy, but what strategies have you used successfully to address family disputes in your own caregiving challenges? I know you've all had them. So what have you done? What do you do when there is a family dispute?
Sometimes I do get used in this capacity a lot, and it doesn't even mean that I have to be there for the family discussion. Usually, it's just helping them think through the words
Yep.
that kind of take out the power of like why, that help them reframe the situation in a different manner, and then to go back and do that. So it can be your best friend too, just
Yeah.
somebody else that can give you perspective.
And we have two examples here where professionals were called in to help. My two sisters and I needed help deciding what kind of living situation was best, and they got help from a geriatric care manager who acted as a mediator. And Karen and her family called in a nurse to help set
Mhm.
up meds and a system for meds. And here's the thing. I certainly have experienced it. All of us in the care economy who serve in some way, you're still a daughter, a wife, a mother,
Mhm.
whatever your relationship is. And even though I do this for other my
Mhm.
clients, oftentimes I don't try to do this for my family, and I call in an outside expert because my father-in-law always saw me as daughter-in-law. My
Mhm.
dad always saw me as daughter. And even though they were proud of me and
Mhm.
they acknowledged what I did professionally,
Your daughter.
I was still the daughter, right? And so you need to use your resources. We have another suggestion here. We make a list of options. Everyone has to write down at least 5, and then we talk. I love that.
Nice.
And then we talk.
Yeah, that's great.
Considering the options first. That's a great suggestion.
Yeah,
All
very
right.
good.
Let's play some more. Another
Okay.
game, another
All right.
game.
Monopoly, money matters. Oh, dare I just keep picking. Oh,
Monopolies.
no, this one's, oh,
This one should be
this
mine,
one.
I think.
Well, that's what I thought. We've got,
Oh,
oh,
that's the old ones.
yes. Okay.
So this one is tricky because there probably is no greater area of
Mhm.
conflict for families. And many people we care for in their generations, this isn't a topic they want to talk about. They learned not to talk about it. They don't
Mhm.
even talk about it with their children. And this is one of those that you may need a professional to help you. And you want to make sure that those money issues are addressed through written in agreements and wills wherever necessary, and not leaving it up to speculation or complicating things by writing things on pieces of paper that conflict with the will. I mean, this is really tricky, and can be the greatest area of family conflict. And you want to make sure, again, going back to the beginning, what's the goal of this game? It's to end the game with your resources, but most importantly, your relationships intact.
Yeah.
And you want to specify those distribution wishes in your will and or your estate plan. I also believe, when I'm working with clients, I tell them that this is their choice. What they do with their money is their choice, and there is no law that says it has to be equal. There's no law that says it has to be equitable. They may choose different things for different reasons, setting up special needs trusts for family members that have long-term care requirements, donating to a charity that they feel strongly about that a loved one might not appreciate. I've seen that
Mhm.
happen. And the one thing I would say is, whenever possible, I encourage people to share their decisions before they. I have had many clients tend to say, I don't know that I want to have that conversation. And I will ask them, what is your goal for your family when you're gone? And if the goal for your family and you're gone is for them to have a preserved relationship,
Mhm.
don't leave that conflict for them to resolve without you.
Right.
And so, really, specifying those distribution wishes, but communicating them while you have an opportunity to explain and articulate that this is your choice. It wasn't a mistake. This is what you want. And they don't have to like it. And it might make things complicated for a while, but it's far better. And there is a chance for a long term relationship preservation if you get in front of that. Not always possible, but it's one I do recommend. I also really encourage people on this money thing. If capacity is becoming an issue, make sure you have assigned someone else to be your fiduciary or conservator to handle your finances if you're no longer able to do that on your own. And make sure that you've specified that person before you need that person and have had those conversations, and that it is documented in your power of attorney documents as part of your will. and make sure that you understand the fiduciary responsibilities of your advisors. Your professional advisors will, but making sure the people involved in this understand what it means to be a fiduciary, to work in someone else's best interest. That's what it means to be a fiduciary. You have a responsibility to make decisions that are in the best interest of someone else.
Including the person you appoint in your power of attorney for finances.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. So, question for you is, who might you ask to manage financial affairs or help you manage financial affairs if family members are not a good choice? We know we've encountered those kinds of situations where maybe it isn't a good choice to have a family member. Any ideas out there of who you might use to help you with that? I see Karen typing, so I'm assuming there's a message coming here. Attorney. And there's an attorney from Candy. Absolutely. An attorney is a good choice. Another one, always an accountant or a financial advisor. If they're not the right person, they can guide you. A money manager. There is a profession called daily money management, and daily money managers can help you manage the day-to-day money management, and make sure that you are not being scammed and protected, and be just that extra set of eyes. So Karen, that's another great suggestion.
Well, and there are professional fiduciaries out there, people who do, that's the focus of their work. Usually it comes under guardianship, which is guardianship of the assets, but they do that outside of guardianship as well. So those folks can be really helpful.
And so it really depends on how comprehensive the needs are, how advanced the needs are. Is it some assistance you're needing, or really somebody to take over and manage those affairs for you? And I think the important thing here is it isn't always a family member. And I do run into that. When I'm working with clients who are putting together their wills, they'll say, oh, the firstborn son. Okay, well, if your firstborn son is a convicted felon and has, a drug problem, probably not, but it's this expectation versus reality, right? And knowing the person you want to ask to do this is the person best suited to do this. And in a lot of cases, maybe, the firstborn son, if the second born daughter is a CPA, she might actually be the best person to do that, right? So making sure you choose that way. All right, let's play another game.
Okay. Would you rather, the harsh reality?
Would you rather? And I think this one is yours.
Okay. I don't know if you know the game Would You Rather, but it has choices like would you rather cut the lawn with nail clippers or paint the house with a child's paintbrush? So often with two terrible choices. And that is the harsh reality sometimes. Sometimes the choices are not great choices. So how do we come to these? And we all agree that we would evaluate our values and then pick our values as a way to choose between two bad things so that your options afterwards are at least aligned with your values. You definitely we'll bring this up all the time. You need to research your options so that you're very well informed. And that again brings in that team. Ask your friends, ask your family, ask professionals, get the whole group involved so that you understand what your options are when you have this. And then create plans for that, in a way, worst case scenario or the choice you don't really like necessarily. And if that doesn't start to work out well, as we've been talking about, be adaptable, be able to have a backup plan and be able to change those plans. Is there a story that one of you guys wants to bring up?
Well, I'm going to ask a question first. So we'll ask the question here. What decisions have you faced as a caregiver where you had only unpleasant choices?
So the one that comes to mind for me was when we realized that Dad was definitely suffering from significant cognitive impairment. It came when I got a notice from his long-term care insurance company that he hadn't paid his bill, which was great that he had the insurance. That was not so disalarming. Or so alarming. What was the most alarming is when I got on the phone with him to tell him that he needed to pay the bill. He couldn't figure out how to do it on the computer, and it was very clear that something was wrong. And as we moved forward and realized and uncovered what was going on with him, the only option that we had was to go to court and apply to remove his rights, or to let him continue to give away his money. He'd already given away $200,000. So I was sick to my stomach about thinking about having to apply for guardianship, but that really wasn't another option. So that was an example for me of having to do something I really didn't want to do, but it was the only way we could protect him.
Well,
Right. And
oh, go
in
ahead.
my, I'm sorry, in my family's life, my mother was very, very, very social and needed to be social to be her best self in her cognitive decline. But as she started to transition from mild cognitive issues to more moderate, her ability to drive was starting to be impaired. And she had to make a choice. Do I give up my driver's license and be safe on the road? But that's isolating. And then that became, where do I live then? If I can't be social, if I can't get out of my house to be social, how much support system goes in there? So it was that drive or lose her sociability.
We have another example in the chat, having to make a decision to put my father in a care facility or quit my job to care for him.
Mhm.
Right.
Really good example of a would you rather kind of game.
Mhm.
And a parent having to choose. I now need care and I need to move. Do I live near my daughter or do I live near my son? These are all really complicated would you rather type choices. And they
Right.
start from the moment of diagnosis. They start from the moment of that caregiving begins. And, would you rather have this experimental healthcare treatment or put your affairs in order? I mean, from those they are all kinds of, and that is actually mine. Would you rather do this or put your affairs in order? And it's really scary. These are scary choices. These are
And
uncomfortable.
Nancy brings up a really common one: move my dad to memory care or have my mom's health suffer
Yeah.
as she tries to take care of him day in and day out.
Yeah.
Uh, Sometimes we make promises that somebody will never go somewhere, but the price can be the caregiver mental, physical, and health has to decline.
Yeah.
I don't think those are terrible.
Complicated
Rather,
choices. That's the choice. That's the reality here. So just doing your best to evaluate your choices and research your options and create plans and backup plans, being as
Mhm.
flexible as you can. Let's play one more game. I don't think we're going to get
Okay.
through all the four, but I think we can do one more.
Okay, we have chutes and ladders.
All right. And this
okay.
one's for you too.
Okay, Shoots and Ladders, that classic game where you climb up when things are going well and slide down when things are not going well. This is kind of like entering the healthcare system. Sometimes things go your way, but sometimes you're sliding down the chute. So we go into the hospital. We think that it's going to be something simple, but we lose some function while we're there, and we don't know how we're going to be when we get out. Is this a temporary adjustment, or is this something permanent? My father-in-law recently went into the hospital for what my mother-in-law thought of as a simple complication to sitting around more. But what I see as it's time for him to call hospice. She thinks that he's going to recover, as he has at the last few times. But I've been noticing each time he goes in the hospital, it's shorter and shorter periods in between, and he's just not recovering. Um, these are the chutes and ladders where if you know the situation, um, you have a better idea of what's coming. But health isn't linear. It can be this sawtooth way of handling our body, handling an illness and recovering from it, or financially, or a million other examples around this one.
So, question we'll put out there. Can you think of a time where you overestimated recovery assumptions or underestimated the length of time and how much it was going to take to get back to a level of function? Is there anybody that has another example there? I think Anne's representation of it being a sawtooth, right? And that the fact that the amount of time in between, that's the one thing I noticed with my father-in-law. It was the amount of time in between episodes and in between problems got shorter and shorter. And that was the indication to us that his body was failing and he was not recovering, and then he was not living as he wished. And that was when we had that conversation about hospice. And Marianne adds, this is a really important one, underestimating how long dementia can last.
And
And
as a geriatrician, we do underestimate how long dementia can last. But the other is that we live with dementia as a chronic disease for a period of time, but then we begin to die from dementia, and the healthcare system doesn't necessarily understand that. So educating yourself about, oh, I've made my family member has made this shift from living well with to dying from, and we need to start, we have to be advocates for, we don't want this kind of intervention anymore. They're now dying from dementia. But I don't think our healthcare system understands when that is.
so we've just gotten the breakout room reminder that it's time to leave the breakout room. So we're going to jump to the end of our game. And we have one more comment here. Underestimated how my family reacted to my mother living with us when she had cancer, a bad result from a routine surgery causing a lifelong disability. Really good examples of chutes and ladders. And again, of not really understanding. You can't see what you don't know, right? So these are really good examples. So finishing the game, the intent of finishing this caregiving game, the reality is it's never finished. Oh goodness, needs are met, relationships are maintained, and quality of life is preserved. We hope very much that you enjoyed